I regret what I helped create. Not the rockets or the electric cars or the neural interfaces. I regret something far more insidious that's infected an entire generation, including my own children. If you've ever watched a child unable to sit through dinner without a screen, comment "aware" below. Last week, I watched my 12-year-old son have what can only be described as a meltdown because his iPad battery died, and we were 30 minutes from home. 30 minutes! He couldn't conceive of sitting in a car for half an hour without a screen to stare at. The idea of looking out the window, talking to me, or simply being alone with his thoughts was apparently unbearable. And as I watched him spiral into genuine distress over this minor inconvenience, I felt something I rarely allow myself to feel: crushing guilt. Because I helped create the world that made him this way. I didn't directly design the iPad or the apps that captured his attention, but I have been a vocal evangelist for technology, for constant connectivity, for the digital future. I built companies that accelerated our march toward a world where screens mediate every experience. I championed innovation without adequately questioning its consequences. And now I'm watching those consequences play out in my own home, in my own children, in ways that terrify me. My son isn't an outlier. He's the norm. And that's the problem. Let me be clear, I'm not anti-technology. I've devoted my life to technological advancement. I still believe technology can solve enormous problems and improve human life in countless ways. But somewhere along the path, from technology as a tool to technology as an environment we live in, we crossed a line that we're only now beginning to understand, and our children are paying the price. 3 months ago, I made a decision that shocked my team and confused my children. I implemented a strict technology policy in my home. No screens during meals, no devices in bedrooms, limited screen time on weekends, books instead of tablets before bed. The reaction was immediate and intense. The teens acted like I'd implemented medieval torture. The younger kids genuinely didn't understand what to do with themselves. Several spent the first screen-free evening literally wandering around the house, unsure how to occupy their time without a device. That's when it really hit me. We've raised a generation that doesn't know how to be bored, that can't tolerate understimulation, that needs constant digital input to feel okay. And I helped create that. Not through malice, but through negligence, through assuming that unlimited access to information and entertainment was purely beneficial, through failing to ask deeper questions about what we were doing to developing brains. I've been doing research over the past few months, deep research into what screens are actually doing to children's brains, attention spans, and development. What I've learned has fundamentally changed how I think about my role in the technological revolution. Here's what the science shows, and it's alarming. Children exposed to significant screen time from early ages show measurably different brain development than previous generations. The areas responsible for deep focus, patience, and delayed gratification are underdeveloped. The constant dopamine hits from apps and games have rewired reward systems in ways that make ordinary life feel painfully underwhelming. Kids today have attention spans that are on average significantly shorter than children 20 years ago. They struggle to read long-form text. They can't sit through a movie without checking their phones. They have difficulty with sustained focus on any task that doesn't provide immediate feedback and reward, but it goes deeper than attention spans. We're seeing changes in social development, emotional regulation, creativity, and critical thinking. Children who grow up with screens as their primary form of entertainment and stimulation develop differently than children who grow up playing, exploring, navigating boredom through imagination. And here's the part that keeps me up at night. This wasn't an accident. This was designed. The apps and platforms that have captured our children's attention were explicitly engineered to be addictive. Teams of psychologists and neuroscientists were employed to make these experiences as compelling and hard to resist as possible. Every notification, Every like, every reward mechanism was carefully calibrated to hijack the brain's reward systems. I know this because I've employed similar people. I've sat in meetings where we discussed user engagement and retention. I've celebrated metrics that showed people spending more time with our products. At the time, it seemed like success. Now, I wonder if we were measuring the wrong things. We weren't just building products. We were building habits, dependencies. And in children whose brains are still developing, whose self-regulation is still forming, those dependencies are particularly powerful and potentially damaging. My daughter is 15, brilliant kid, strong student, seems well-adjusted on the surface. But last month, I noticed something that chilled me. She was doing homework, or trying to. I watched her for 30 minutes, and this is what I saw. Read a few sentences of her textbook, check phone, write a few words, watch 2 minutes of a video for class, return to textbook. She wasn't deliberately distracted. She was compulsively checking, almost unconsciously. Her phone was face down on her desk, but every minute or two, her hand would reach for it automatically. Even when there were no notifications, even when nothing had changed, she couldn't not check. This is what we've done. We've created a generation that can't not check their devices, that feels phantom vibrations, that experiences genuine anxiety when separated from their phones, that checks screens within minutes of waking and moments before sleep. And I'm complicit in normalizing this behavior. I think about my own childhood in South Africa. We played outside for hours. We were bored regularly, and that boredom forced us to be creative. We had long, meandering conversations because there was nothing else to do. We read books, actual books, because they were the most interesting option available. We developed attention spans because we had to. We learned patience because immediate gratification wasn't always possible. We built social skills through face-to-face interaction because there was no alternative. My children don't have that experience. None of today's children do. And while they have access to information and opportunities we couldn't have imagined, they're losing something fundamental in the trade. They're losing the ability to sit with discomfort, to work through boredom toward creativity, to think deeply without constant interruption, to form thoughts that take longer than a tweet to express, to have conversations that meander and explore rather than staying surface level. I see it in my own kids. My younger son, who's 9, can't play alone anymore without a screen. He literally doesn't know what to do with himself. The imaginative play that children have engaged in for millennia, creating worlds, telling stories, exploring ideas through pretend, is foreign to him. When I suggest he play with his toys, he looks at me blankly. When I tell him to go outside, he asks, to do what? My teenage daughter can't have a conversation at dinner without her phone nearby. Even when she's not using it, its presence seems necessary. She picks it up, puts it down, picks it up again. She's present, but not present here. She's elsewhere. And my 12-year-old, the one who melted down over the dead iPad, he started showing signs of genuine anxiety when separated from devices. Irritability, restlessness, inability to settle. These are classic withdrawal symptoms. My son is 12 years old and showing signs of technological addiction. As a parent, it's heartbreaking. As someone who helped create and normalize the always connected lifestyle, it's something worse than heartbreaking. It's responsibility. I've started talking to other parents, not just wealthy tech executives, but regular parents across different backgrounds. And I'm hearing the same stories everywhere. Kids who can't entertain themselves, teenagers who sleep with phones under their pillows, 7-year-olds who throw tantrums when screen time ends, families where everyone is physically present but emotionally absent, each lost in their own device. We've normalized something that when you step back and really look at it is bizarre and troubling. We've created a world where it's considered normal for children to spend 4, 5, 6 hours a day staring at screens, where teenagers average 7 to 9 hours of recreational screen time daily, where toddlers know how to navigate iPads before they can read. And we've done it in a single generation. We haven't had time to understand the full consequences. We're running an uncontrolled experiment on developing brains, and we won't know the full results for decades. But we're already seeing warning signs: rising rates of anxiety and depression in young people, epidemic levels of attention problems, declining reading scores, reduced creativity metrics, increased social isolation despite being more connected than ever. Correlation isn't causation, I know, but the correlations are too consistent, too widespread to ignore. Here's what really troubles me. Even knowing all this, even seeing the effects in my own children, it's incredibly hard to change course. Because the technology is everywhere. Because all their friends have unlimited access. Because schools require devices for homework. Because resisting screen culture means swimming against a powerful current that's pulling in the opposite direction. Last month, I told my 15-year-old daughter I was concerned about her phone use. She looked at me with genuine confusion. "But Dad, you're on your phone constantly. You run a tech company. You tweet all day. How is what I'm doing different?" She had a point. How could I tell her that screens were problematic when I was modeling constant connectivity? How could I advocate for balance when my own life demonstrated that success meant perpetual digital engagement? That conversation changed something in me. I realized I couldn't ask my children to have a healthier relationship with technology while I modeled an unhealthy one. I couldn't tell them screens were damaging while building my entire life around digital platforms. So I started making changes, real changes, not just rules for my kids, but changes in my own behavior. I stopped checking my phone first thing in the morning. I implemented phone-free hours in the evening. I started reading physical books again instead of scrolling through news feeds. I began having meals, all meals, without any devices present. The first few weeks were harder than I expected. I hadn't realized how dependent I'd become on constant digital stimulation. How uncomfortable I felt with empty moments that weren't immediately filled with content. How often I reached for my phone without conscious thought. If it was hard for me, an adult with fully developed self-regulation, imagine how hard it is for children, whose brains are still forming, whose impulse control is still developing. After a month of this new approach, I started noticing changes in my kids, small ones at first. My 9-year-old began playing with toys again, actually playing, creating stories and scenarios. My 12-year-old picked up a book voluntarily for the first time in months. My 15-year-old had a conversation with me at dinner that lasted more than 5 minutes and didn't involve her checking her phone. These sound like small victories. They shouldn't be victories at all. They should be normal childhood behaviors, but in today's world, they feel like achievements. I've been talking to experts, neuroscientists, developmental psychologists, educators who specialize in technology's impact on learning and development, and I keep hearing the same message. We're in the early stages of understanding how profound the changes are, but the changes are real, significant, and potentially lasting. Dr. Sarah Chen, a neuroscientist I consulted, put it bluntly: "We've introduced a fundamentally different environment for brain development. Children's brains are adapting to expect constant stimulation, immediate rewards, and rapid task switching." Another expert I spoke with, Dr. James Robertson, who studies technology addiction, said something that haunts me. We're seeing behaviors in children that we typically associate with substance addiction. The compulsive checking, the withdrawal symptoms, the inability to moderate use despite negative consequences, the escalating tolerance where more screen time is needed to achieve the same satisfaction. If these behaviors were associated with anything other than technology, we'd be calling it an addiction crisis. These aren't anti-technology alarmists. They're serious researchers who understand both the benefits and risks of digital technology, and they're concerned, deeply concerned. What troubles me most is how normalized it all has become. We see a toddler swiping an iPad and think it's cute. We see teenagers unable to have dinner without phones and shrug because that's just how kids are now. We see declining attention spans, rising anxiety, and reduced face-to-face social skills, and we treat it as inevitable. But it's not inevitable. It's a choice we're making, often unconsciously, about what kind of childhood we want for our kids and what kind of adults they'll become. I'm not saying we should eliminate technology from children's lives. That's neither possible nor desirable. Technology offers genuine benefits: access to information, creative tools, connection to distant family and friends, educational resources. But we need balance, boundaries, intentionality. We need to ask whether the current level of childhood screen exposure is serving our children or harming them, and we need to be honest about the answer. I think about the generations who grew up before smartphones and constant connectivity. They're not technologically incompetent. Many are the ones who built the digital world, but they also developed in an environment that allowed for boredom, for deep focus, for unmediated social interaction. They have skills and capacities that today's children are struggling to develop. What are we losing in this trade? And is what we're gaining worth what we're giving up? I don't have all the answers, but I know this. Watching my 12-year-old unable to tolerate 30 minutes without a screen. Watching my 15-year-old compulsively check her phone every 2 minutes. Watching my 9-year-old unable to play imaginatively. This isn't the future I wanted to help create. So I'm making changes in my home, in my own behavior, and in how I think about technology's role in human life, especially children's lives. I'm also speaking out now using whatever platform I have to raise awareness about what we're doing to developing brains. Not because I think technology is evil or because I want to turn back the clock, but because I believe we can do better. We can have the benefits of technology without sacrificing children's development, attention, and humanity. But it requires acknowledging the problem first, admitting that unlimited screen access isn't neutral or benign. Recognizing that what we're doing is new, untested, and showing concerning results. I helped create a world of constant connectivity, perpetual stimulation, and screen-mediated experience. I celebrated when people spent more time engaging with technology. I saw addiction metrics as success indicators. I was wrong, and our children are paying the price for that mistake. This isn't about blame, it's about responsibility. About recognizing unintended consequences and having the courage to change course. About putting children's long-term development ahead of short-term convenience or business metrics. My children's generation will live with the consequences of choices we're making now. They'll inherit brains shaped by constant digital stimulation. They'll navigate adulthood with attention spans formed by infinite scroll and autoplay. They'll build relationships using social skills developed primarily through screens rather than face-to-face interaction. What kind of adults will they become? What capacities will they have or lack? What kind of society will they create? I don't know. Nobody knows yet. We're still in the middle of this massive experiment. But I know I want better for my kids. I want them to be able to sit with boredom and let it spark creativity. I want them to read deeply and think deeply. I want them to have real conversations, form genuine connections, exist fully in physical reality rather than constantly mediating experience through screens. And I think most parents want the same thing for their children. We just need to be willing to swim against the current of normalized screen culture and make different choices. It's not easy. In many ways, it's harder than anything else I've done professionally, but it's necessary because what we're doing isn't working. The experiment is showing troubling results, and we have the power to change course if we're willing to acknowledge the problem and take action. I regret what I helped create, not the technology itself, but the culture of constant connectivity and screen dependence that has captured our children. But regret without action is useless, so I'm changing. My household is changing, my thinking is changing, and I hope that by being honest about this, I can help other parents feel empowered to make changes too. To set boundaries, to prioritize development over convenience, to raise children who can navigate both digital and physical reality without being dominated by either. Our children deserve better than what we're currently giving them, and we have the power to provide it. We just need the courage to acknowledge the problem and the commitment to do something about it. What's your experience with children and screens? Have you noticed changes in attention, behavior, or development? How are you navigating this in your own family? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I genuinely want to hear from parents who are wrestling with these same challenges. If this resonated with you, please share it with other parents. We need to have this conversation more openly and honestly. Subscribe for more discussions about technology, parenting, and the future we're creating for the next generation.